Close your eyes and picture Rome. The marble, the monuments, the eternal city of emperors and gods. A city of 1 million people, the largest city on Earth, the center of the known world. Now imagine that same city 150 years later. This is Rome in 550 AD, and what you are about to see will haunt you. The population had collapsed from 1 million to perhaps 30,000 people. 30,000 people in a city built for 1 million. Every building a monument to a world that no longer existed. To understand Rome in 550 AD, you must first understand the catastrophe that preceded it. 410 AD, the Visigoths sack Rome. For the first time in 800 years, the city falls to a foreign enemy. 455 AD, the Vandals sack Rome again. For 2 weeks, they strip the city of everything portable. 476 AD, the last Western Roman emperor is deposed. A barbarian general named Odoacer sends the imperial insignia to Constantinople. Then the Gothic Wars. 20 years of warfare across Italy between the Byzantine Empire and the Ostrogoths. The Gothic Wars killed more Romans than any barbarian invasion. They destroyed the infrastructure that kept the city alive. By 550 AD, the aqueducts that had supplied Rome with 1 million cubic meters of water per day lay broken and dry. So what did Rome actually look like in 550 AD? The great monuments still stood, the Colosseum, the Pantheon, the triumphal arches, but they stood in a silence that would have been unimaginable to the people who built them. The Forum Romanum, once the beating heart of Western civilization, was beginning to flood. The drains and sewers, the great Cloaca Maxima, had not been maintained for decades. The Tiber flooded regularly. The low-lying areas of the city became malarial swamp. The Pantheon alone survived largely intact because the church had converted it into a Christian temple in 608 AD. Walk into the Pantheon today and you are standing in a space that Romans of 550 AD could also enter, largely unchanged. But elsewhere, the city was cannibalizing itself. Marble columns removed from temples to be burned in lime kilns, statues smashed for their metal, bronze roof tiles melted down for weapons. Every generation that passed stripped another layer of glory from the ancient city. But people did remain. 30,000 souls in the ruins of a 1 million-person city. Who were they? Most survivors clustered near the Tiber, the one reliable source of water after the aqueducts failed. The old Roman aristocracy, what remained of it, still occupied some of the great houses on the Aventine and Chilean hills. These were men who still read Virgil and Cicero, who still corresponded in classical Latin, who still called themselves Romans, even as everything that word had once meant dissolved around them. Boethius, perhaps the last great Roman philosopher, wrote his masterwork, The Consolation of Philosophy, while awaiting execution in 524 AD. He was executed by the Ostrogothic king Theodoric. His book would become one of the most read texts of the entire Middle Ages. Below the aristocracy, ordinary Romans scratched out whatever living they could. Many had retreated into the ground floors of the great insulae, the ancient apartment blocks, using them as ready-made shelter. Above them, the empty upper floors slowly deteriorated. Tiles fell, walls cracked. The great buildings were becoming ruins from the top down. In this collapsing world, one institution held everything together: the Church. The Bishop of Rome, the Pope, had become the most powerful man in the city. In the absence of emperors, he was effectively the city's governor. Gregory the Great organized the food supply, negotiated with the Lombards threatening the city, and managed the welfare of Rome's shrunken population. Without the Church, Rome would not have survived at all. The great basilicas, Santa Maria Maggiore, San Giovanni in Laterano, San Pietro, were the most magnificent buildings in post-collapse Rome, and they were filled with art, mosaics, paintings, precious metalwork that made them the custodians of Roman artistic tradition. But theology and art were luxuries. Daily survival in 550 AD Rome was a harsh, practical business. Water was the first problem. Without the aqueducts, every drop had to be hauled from the Tiber or drawn from wells. Food came from the fields that had reclaimed the city's abandoned districts, gardens grown in ancient forums, pigs rooting in ruined temples. The Palatine Hill, once covered by the imperial palaces of Rome's emperors, had become farmland in abandoned ruin. Malaria stalked the low-lying districts. The flooding Tiber brought disease. Life expectancy had dropped dramatically even from the already modest Roman average. The plague of Justinian, which had devastated Constantinople in 441 AD, swept through Rome's diminished population multiple times.
Gregory the Great himself organized a great procession through Rome to pray for the plague's end in 590 AD and watched as 80 people died during the procession itself. Yet even in this diminished world, the monuments of Rome still inspired awe. The Colosseum had been used for its last gladiatorial games in 435 AD. By 550 AD, it was silent, still standing, still overwhelming in its scale. The Castel Sant'Angelo, originally Hadrian's mausoleum, had become the city's primary fortress and refuge. During the Gothic Wars, Pope Vigilius had sheltered inside it while the city changed hands around him. The Arch of Titus still stood in the Forum, the Arch of Constantine, the Column of Trajan, all still standing, still legible, still telling their stories to whoever cared to read them. No figure defines Rome in 550 to 600 AD more than Gregory the Great. Born into one of Rome's last great senatorial families, converted his own house into a monastery, became pope in 590 AD against his will. He managed the plague, fed the poor, negotiated with the Lombards who were sacking the cities of northern Italy. He wrote theology, administered the church's vast estates, and sent missionaries to convert the Anglo-Saxons of Britain. Gregory transformed the papacy from a local religious institution into the dominant force in Western civilization for the next 1,000 years.
He died in 604 AD, exhausted, ill, never having left Rome during his entire papacy. He had given everything to keep the city alive. But what did it actually feel like to live in this city of ghosts? Imagine walking to the market and passing the Colosseum every single day, a building that could have held your entire city's population twice over, standing empty and silent. Imagine drawing water from a well sunk through the paving stones of the greatest forum on earth. Imagine going to church in a building that had once been a temple to all the gods of Rome, praying in Latin, the same language that had once issued commands to half the world. These people were not primitives, stumbling through ruins they didn't understand. They knew exactly what they had lost, and they grieved it. And yet, from this ghost city, something extraordinary emerged. The church preserved what it could: the Latin language, Roman law, classical philosophy, the texts of Virgil and Cicero and Augustine. The Rome of 550 AD was not the end of a story. It was the painful, difficult beginning of a new one. The people who lived in the ruins of the greatest city on earth kept the idea of Rome alive, even when the reality had dissolved. They called themselves Romans. They spoke Latin. They looked at the Colosseum every day and remembered, or tried to remember, what it had meant. Rome did not die in 550 AD. It transformed into something different, something that would take another 1,000 years to fully become itself again. If Rome's ghost city moved you, subscribe to The Ancient Lens. Every week, a new lost world brought back to life.